My mom spent $400,000 of my money. Your brother wanted a luxury car, and if you don't like it, you can leave. I walked out without a word. 5 days later, they lost the car and the house, and now they're begging me for a second chance. I, 29 am, discovered the truth on a Tuesday morning when I opened my brokerage statement and saw zeros where there should have been six figures. The money wasn't inheritance or lottery winnings. I'd spent 6 years working 80-hour weeks at a tech startup, grinding through code reviews and product launches while living in a studio apartment that cost more than it was worth. When the company went public, my stock options converted into real money. For $100,000. Enough to finally breathe. I kept it quiet from most people, but Mom knew. She was the first person I told, sitting in her kitchen while she made tea and congratulated me like she'd contributed to the achievement herself. I mentioned wanting to buy a house eventually, maybe take a real vacation. She'd smiled and said I deserved it all. What I didn't know was that she'd also told my younger brother, and apparently they'd decided my bank account was a family resource. The statement showed a pattern of withdrawals over 3 months. 20,000 here, 50,000 there, smaller amounts scattered throughout. All authorized through the joint account Mom had convinced me to set up years ago for emergencies. She'd said it would make things easier if something happened to me, if she needed to access funds to help. I'd been 23 and stupid enough to think that made sense. I drove to her house without calling first. My brother's new car sat in the driveway, a sleek BMW with temporary plates still in the window. The thing probably cost 80 grand. I felt my jaw tighten as I walked past it. Mom answered the door with flour on her hands and surprise on her face. She asked what brought me by, and I told her we needed to talk about my money. The smile disappeared. She wiped her hands on a towel and said we should sit down. The living room had new furniture. Leather sectional, expensive looking. I hadn't noticed it the last time I'd visited. My brother sat there playing video games on a television that definitely hadn't been there before either. He glanced up when I walked in, then back at his screen. I asked Mom directly how much she'd taken. She got defensive immediately, saying she hadn't taken anything, she'd borrowed it. There was a difference. My brother needed a car for his new job, and the furniture had been falling apart, and didn't I want my family to be comfortable? I pointed out that she'd never asked permission. She said she didn't think she needed to because family helps family. My brother finally paused his game and said I was being dramatic. The money was just sitting there, and it wasn't like I was using it for anything important. That's when something in me went cold and quiet. I asked Mom for an exact accounting of where every dollar went. She got flustered and said she didn't have exact numbers, but the car was maybe 70,000, and the furniture was 15, and there were some other expenses for the house. My brother had needed some things too. New clothes for job interviews, his security deposit, some credit card debt that was really hurting his credit score. I did the math in my head. Even being generous, that accounted for maybe 200,000. I asked about the rest. Mom said there were other things, various expenses, and she'd pay me back once my brother got on his feet. He was starting a really good job soon. Just a few more months. My brother added that I should be happy to help him since I'd had it so easy in life. I'd always been the smart one, the one who got the scholarships and the good job. He'd struggled, and didn't he deserve a chance too? I looked at them both and realized I was angrier than I'd ever been in my life, but I also felt weirdly calm, clear-headed. I told Mom I wanted to be removed from the joint account immediately. She started to argue, saying that was unnecessary, we could work this out. I repeated myself. Today? Right now? She got upset then, saying I was being ungrateful. She'd raised me, sacrificed for me, and this was how I repaid her? By making her feel like a criminal? My brother chimed in that I was being selfish and money-obsessed, that the car was necessary for his career, and if I didn't like it, I could leave. So I left. I didn't slam the door or yell. I just walked out, got in my car, and drove home. On the way, I called my bank and explained the situation. They said I couldn't remove her without her signature since it was a joint account, but I could withdraw the remaining funds and close it from my end. I authorized the transfer immediately. 43,000 was all that remained. I moved it to a new account she had no access to. Then I called a lawyer. He listened to everything and said I had options. The joint account complicated things, but the pattern of withdrawals without my knowledge or consent could constitute financial exploitation, especially if I could prove I never authorized the amounts. He asked if I wanted to pursue criminal charges. I said I'd think about it. What I really wanted was my money back. The lawyer suggested we start with a formal demand letter. Make it clear I expected full repayment within 30 days or I'd take legal action. He could have it drafted by end of day. I told him to do it. Then I made another call. Mom's house had a mortgage. I knew that much. What I didn't know was that she'd been struggling with payments for the last year. My brother had mentioned it once in passing, something about interest rates. I pulled up property records online and found the lender information. One more call to a contact I had in banking gave me a clearer picture. She was 3 months behind. The BMW in the driveway wasn't paid off either. My brother had put down $30,000, my $30,000, but financed the rest at a ridiculous interest rate because his credit was apparently as bad as I'd suspected. I spent the rest of the day making a plan. The demand letter arrived at Mom's house on Thursday via certified mail. I know because I tracked it. She called me within an hour, crying, saying I couldn't be serious. This would destroy the family. I asked if she had my money. She said I knew she didn't have that kind of cash available. I told her she had 29 days left and hung up. My brother called next, angry. He said I was being vindictive and cruel, that Mom was beside herself. I asked if he planned to sell his car to pay me back. He said that was insane. He needed it for work. I asked when he'd started this amazing job. He kept mentioning. Silence. Then he said he was still in the interview process, but it was looking really promising. I hung up on him too. On Friday, I called the mortgage lender, explained that I was the son and had some concerns about my mother's financial situation. Was there anything I should know? The representative was sympathetic. She said they'd been working with her on a forbearance program, but it was ending soon. If she couldn't catch up on payments, they'd have to start foreclosure proceedings. I thanked her for the information. Then I made an offer. If the house went to foreclosure, I'd be interested in purchasing it at auction. Could she note that in the file? She said she absolutely could. My brother's car loan was through a dealership financing program with terms that made my eyes water. 30% interest because his credit score was somewhere in the 500s. He'd already missed his first payment. I had a friend who worked in auto lending look into it. The car could be repossessed within 90 days of default. I didn't have to do anything except wait. Update 1. The weekend was quiet. No calls, no messages. I assumed Mom was trying to figure out her options. My brother posted on social media about going out with friends, showing off the BMW. I screenshot it for my lawyer. Monday morning, my uncle called. Mom's brother, someone I'd always liked. He said he'd heard about our situation and wanted to mediate. Could we all sit down and talk this through like adults? I told him I was happy to talk as soon as I had a cashier's check for $400,000. He sighed and said I was being unreasonable. Family didn't sue family. I pointed out that family also didn't steal from family, but here we were. He said Mom didn't steal, she borrowed. I asked if he'd be willing to put that in writing and sign a promissory note guaranteeing repayment. He got quiet and said he didn't have that kind of money. I said then he couldn't help, but I appreciated the call. On Tuesday, the 30-day deadline passed. My lawyer filed a civil suit. Mom was served on Wednesday morning. She called me sobbing, saying I was killing her. The stress was too much. How could I do this to my own mother? I asked again if she had my money. She said she'd already explained she couldn't access that amount. I told her the courts would help figure out how she could access it through asset liquidation. She started screaming then, calling me ungrateful and heartless. I hung up. My brother left a voicemail that I didn't listen to. I had the transcription read it to me. He called me every name he could think of and said I'd regret this. I deleted it and forwarded the transcription to my lawyer. Thursday afternoon, I got notification that the mortgage lender had started foreclosure proceedings. Mom was now 5 months behind, and the forbearance had expired. The house would go to auction in 60 days if she couldn't pay the full arrears plus penalties. That total was around $40,000. Friday morning, my brother's BMW was repossessed from a shopping mall parking lot. I know because one of his friends posted about it, tagging him and asking what happened. My brother's response was that his insurance had lapsed and there was a mix-up with the dealership. The friend asked why that would mean repossession. My brother deleted the whole thread. On Saturday, Mom showed up at my apartment. I watched through the peephole as she knocked and called my name. She said she just wanted to talk. Please, couldn't we work this out? I didn't open the door. She stood there for 20 minutes before leaving. Sunday night, I received an email from my uncle. He'd drafted a family repayment plan. Mom would pay me $2,000 per month until the debt was cleared. At that rate, it would take 16 years. The email included justifications about her fixed income and limited earning potential. I didn't respond. Update 2. The lawsuit moved forward. Discovery started, and my lawyer requested all of Mom's financial records. Bank statements, credit card bills, mortgage documents. She tried to fight it, but the court ordered compliance. When we received the documents, the full picture came into focus. The $400,000 had gone to more than just my brother's car and some furniture. Mom had taken a cruise. $25,000. She'd renovated her bathroom. $40,000. There were shopping sprees, jewelry purchases, a timeshare deposit in Florida. My brother had received about $150,000 directly. The rest had funded Mom's lifestyle inflation. My lawyer said it strengthened our case considerably. This wasn't a struggling mother making ends meet. This was someone who treated my savings like a windfall she deserved. The house auction was scheduled. I'd arranged financing through my bank, showing them I had sufficient funds for a cash purchase. The property was assessed at $300,000, but with the distressed sale situation, bidding would likely start lower. I planned to go up to $200,000 if needed. Mom called from my aunt's house. She'd apparently moved in with her sister after the foreclosure notice. She begged me to stop the lawsuit, to call off whatever I was doing with the house. She said she'd find a way to pay me back if I just gave her time. Real time, not some payment plan. Years maybe, but she'd do it. I asked how exactly she planned to come up with $400,000. Silence. Then she said maybe I could forgive part of it. We were family. Didn't that mean anything to me? I told her it had meant something before she stole from me. Now it was just a word. She started crying again and handed the phone to my aunt. My aunt tried the guilt approach, talking about how hard Mom had worked to raise us alone, how much she'd sacrificed. I let her finish, then asked if she'd be willing to contribute to the repayment. She said she couldn't afford that. I said then she should probably stay out of it. She called me cold. I hung up. My brother reached out via email since I'd blocked his number. He said he'd gotten a job finally, starting next month, and he could begin paying me back once he got his first check. Maybe $500 a month to start. He was sorry things had gotten so out of hand, but couldn't we figure this out as brothers? I calculated the math. At $500 per month, he'd pay off his $150,000 in 25 years. I wrote back asking if he was serious. He responded that it was the best he could do, and wasn't something better than nothing? I replied that the court would decide what was better than nothing, and I'd see him at the hearing. The auction happened on a Wednesday. I took the day off work. There were 3 other bidders, but they all dropped out by $160,000. I ended up purchasing Mom's house for $185,000. Below market value, but that's what happens in foreclosure sales. I had it professionally cleaned and put in a tenant. A nice family, actually. 2 kids. They were thrilled to find a 3-bedroom in that neighborhood for reasonable rent. I set it at market rate, which would more than cover my mortgage payment and property taxes. Mom found out when the eviction notice arrived. She had 30 days to vacate. My aunt called this time, furious. She said I'd gone too far, that buying the house out from under my own mother was cruel beyond measure. I pointed out that Mom had lost the house through her own actions. I just happened to be the buyer. My aunt said that was semantics, and everyone would know what kind of person I really was. I told her I was fine with that. Update 3. The civil suit was settled out of court, finally. My lawyer negotiated a judgment that included the house value plus remaining cash debt. Mom and my brother were jointly liable. They'd both signed an agreement acknowledging the debt, which would follow them on their credit reports and could be enforced through wage garnishment, if necessary. The judgment was for $400,000 total. I'd recovered $185,000 through the house purchase, leaving $215,000 outstanding. My brother's wages would be garnished at 15% once he started his job. Mom's Social Security could have a small portion garnished as well, though my lawyer said that might take longer to enforce. I knew I'd never see most of that money, but that wasn't really the point anymore. My brother's job fell through. He claimed the company had budget cuts, but I suspected they'd done a background check and found the judgment. He moved back in with Mom at my aunt's house. From what I heard through family gossip, it wasn't going well. 3 adults in a small 2-bedroom house, all dealing with financial stress and resentment. Mom tried one more time to reach out. She sent a letter, handwritten, talking about forgiveness and family bonds. She said she understood I was hurt and angry, but couldn't I see that destroying her life wouldn't repair our relationship? She asked if I'd really be happy knowing she was suffering. I read it twice, then filed it with the other case documents. The truth was I wasn't happy. But I wasn't unhappy either. Mostly I felt nothing when I thought about them. The anger had burned itself out weeks ago. What remained was just a kind of distant awareness that these people existed and had once been important to me. I thought about responding to the letter. Maybe explaining that this wasn't about revenge or punishment. It was about consequences. About her learning that actions have outcomes. That you can't just take what doesn't belong to you and expect forgiveness to erase the theft. But I didn't write back. There wasn't anything left to say. 6 months after everything settled, I bought my own house. 3 bedrooms, nice yard, in a neighborhood I actually liked. I used the rental income from Mom's old house for part of the down payment. The irony wasn't lost on me. I heard through family channels that Mom and my brother had moved to a different state, somewhere cheaper. My aunt had apparently gotten tired of supporting them. They were sharing an apartment and both working retail jobs. My brother's garnishment had started, so I received small payments monthly. $200 here, $300 there. At that rate, I'd be 70 before the debt was cleared. I considered forgiving it sometimes. Late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd run the numbers and think about how easy it would be to just let it go. File the paperwork, release the judgment, move on completely. But then I'd remember the look on my brother's face when he told me to leave if I didn't like what they'd done. The casual entitlement, the assumption that my money was somehow communal property. Mom's justifications about sacrifice and family while she wore new jewelry I'd unknowingly paid for. The garnishment stayed in place. A year later, Mom sent another letter. This one was different. No pleading, no guilt trips. Just a simple acknowledgement that she'd made terrible choices and destroyed our relationship. She said she understood if I never wanted to speak to her again, but she hoped someday I might be willing to hear her out. Not for forgiveness, just for closure. She included her new phone number. I kept the letter but didn't call. Maybe someday I would. Maybe someday the nothing I felt would shift into something else, something that made reaching out feel possible. But that day wasn't today, and it probably wouldn't be tomorrow either. I had my house, my career, my life rebuilt on my own terms. The $400,000 was gone, most of it unrecoverable. But I'd gotten something else instead. Clarity. Boundaries. The knowledge that I could walk away from people who hurt me, even family, and survive it. My brother never reached out at all. I assumed he still blamed me for everything, still saw himself as the victim in a story where his older brother had ruined his life over money. Maybe that was easier than accepting responsibility. I didn't think about them much anymore. Sometimes I'd see the rental payment come through and remember, but it felt distant, like something that happened to someone else. The family had fractured completely. My aunt didn't speak to me. Extended relatives had mostly taken Mom's side, or at least decided I'd gone too far. Holiday invitations stopped coming. I spent Thanksgiving with friends instead and found I preferred it. I wasn't the person I'd been before all this. That version of me had been softer, more willing to excuse things for the sake of peace. More naive about what family meant. This version understood that love without respect was worthless, and that sometimes walking away was the only form of self-preservation that worked. Sometimes I wondered if I'd done the right thing. If there had been another path that didn't end with complete estrangement and financial ruin for them. But then I'd remember that I'd given them a choice. Pay me back, or face consequences. They'd chosen to treat my demand as unreasonable, my boundaries as negotiable. They'd made their decision. I just followed through on mine. The rental property had good tenants who always paid on time. I drove past it occasionally, seeing the kids playing in the yard that used to be Mom's. The house looked better maintained now than it ever had when she lived there. That felt like its own kind of justice. I wasn't looking for reconciliation anymore. I'd stopped waiting for apologies that would mean anything. Life had moved forward, and I'd moved with it, leaving behind the version of family that required me to set myself on fire to keep others warm. That was enough.